Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to this Seatrade Maritime Virtual Conference, sponsored by ADNOC Logistics and Services.
ADNOC Logistics and Services is the shipping and maritime logistics arm of ADNOC Group and is the largest company of its kind in the UAE, with over 40 years of experience in shipping and maritime logistics. We offer agile, integrated, and seamless end-to-end solutions across the entire oil and gas supply chain. We own and operate the UAE's largest and most diverse fleet with about 200 owned and chartered vessels. Our shipping vessels call at 65 ports in 160 countries over 6 continents. ADNOC LNS offers specialist marine services, maintaining critical subsea infrastructure, and is a strategic partner to all Abu Dhabi petroleum ports. Our marine services also include oil spill response and HNS services, catering to the UAE and the region. Our integrated logistics solutions are provided across all critical oil and gas hubs in the UAE and include the largest maritime logistics base in the UAE at 1.5 million square meters, conveniently located in Musafah, offering a secure location for oilfield equipment and materials to be manufactured, handled, and stored. Our integrated logistics solutions are critical for all offshore operations, transporting both equipment and personnel. We are committed to 100% HSE. Our people, our planet, and value generation for our customers. At ADNOC Logistics and Services, we are going further every day to secure the UAE's leadership in the global maritime sector.
To introduce our panel and guide us through the next 60 minutes of discussion, please welcome your moderator for this session, founder and CEO of eTriena Media, Etna Triena.
And hello, and let me add my welcome to all of you. Welcome to Seatrade Maritime Middle East. And today it's time to look at ship tech. We're absolutely delighted to be able to bring you this day 2 of this very important and timely virtual conference. And again, it's great to see so many of you signed in already, really demonstrating the tremendous interest from around the world in terms of looking at what's going on here in the Middle East when we look at the maritime sector. Now, as always, we have an action-packed day for you, very content-rich. And as we've had yesterday, and indeed we will carry on doing this. And, you know, at the opening of this, we were delighted to have the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, Keynote Lim, actually address this, maritime conference here that we have virtually. So it was great to have him on board. And also yesterday we heard from the Chief Commercial Officer from DP World and so many other great speakers really sharing their knowledge, their insight, and bringing you up to date with what is in terms of the maritime sector and the industry here in the Middle East and its impact indeed around the world. Now, our session today will focus on the future, of course, and clean energy. And we're very, very grateful to our sponsor, ADNOC Logistics and Services. Everybody is on board. Just before we get started, a quick reminder to you. I would really love you all to get involved in this discussion as you did yesterday. So we were very, very happy to get all your questions. We have a wonderful panel lined up. And we're really going to be taking a look, at accelerating shipping's clean energy transition. There's so much going on at the moment. And if you just familiarize yourself with the screen there on the right-hand side, you can actually make sure that you get involved and do send us your questions. And I'll do my best to make sure that we get them in as part of the discussion, and I'll make sure that our speakers address them for you. So it's great to have everybody on board. Let me quickly tell you who our panel is, and we will get right down to business. From ADNOC Logistics and Services, we have the Senior Vice President of Ship Management, Captain Mohammed Al Ali, will join us. We also have Christos Chris Sakis, who will also join us from DNVGL. He is the Business Development Manager. We're looking forward to hearing what Christos has to say. Also from Intertanko, we have the Technical Director, Dragos Rauta, will join us as well, and Steve Esau, he's the General Manager with CLNG. So we really have a diverse panel there, tremendous knowledge, great being able to bring to you what's going on in the industry and really looking at the future in terms of sustainability and making that clean energy transition. It really, I think, is on the top of everybody's agenda. But first, I'm absolutely delighted to have as our opening keynote, we're going to hear from Captain Al Ali, a gentleman who started his career in maritime back in 1996 and actually started as a deck cadet. And he sailed the first UAE National Master on an LNG carrier in 2008. And since then, he's just been one of the busiest people around, and he now takes care of the entire fleet. He's the Senior Vice President for Management with ADNOC Logistics and Services. So I'm going to hand over the opening keynote. I'm absolutely delighted. A big warm welcome to you, Captain Mohammed Al Ali.
Thank you very much, Etna. Really a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. It gives me great pleasure to be among this expert audience and participants at Sea Trade Maritime Middle East 2020. I would like to thank the organizers for this opportunity to share my thoughts on the latest shipping developments and join my peers and colleagues in discussing where we are at the end of an extraordinary year and, importantly, where our industry is heading and future trends. It goes without saying that the pandemic has disrupted not only our sector, but also every area of economic activity and every aspect of human life across the world. This is particularly significant in the context of shipping because the economic and human aspects of our industry are fundamentally intertwined. After all, ships do not sail without seafarers, not yet anyway. And throughout the first half of 2020, the plight of seafarers who were stranded on board against a backdrop of worldwide lockdowns and movement restrictions became a top priority for all operators across the world. And at ADNOC Logistics, we took a leading role looking at every possible solution to secure and safeguard the well-being of our 2,000 seafarers, an achievement I consider very special. As a former seafarer, familiar with the hardships of sea life, I can only imagine the mental and physical anguish after many months of being stranded on board. It was an incredible human crisis, but it also brought out a lot of solidarity within our industry. And there has been an exceptional level of global and inter-country cooperation among all stakeholders to secure crew changes and end this crisis. And here I would like to pause for a moment in recognition of the exceptional resilience and spirit of our seafarers. I clearly remember this time last year, speaking at the very same forum. We are entering a new decade. Just saying 2020 brought an air of excitement to any conversation. There was a lot of positivity about the industry continuing to show signs of recovery, and especially at ADNOC L&S, as we were finalizing our ambitious growth and fleet expansion plans. And there was also a lot of anticipation about IMO 2020, the biggest shakeup of our business in the modern times, with significant and long-lasting changes for the shipping and refining industries. And of course, there was an expectation of serious impact on costs and competitiveness. And fast forward 12 months, we are faced with disruption of truly unforeseen proportions and far-reaching repercussions, the context of which is not known to us. So being cautious in the current climate is probably a wise thing, because the current scenario and reduced global demand will prevail in the immediate aftermath of the pandemic. But the world's shipping industry has proven its resilience many times over and will weather this storm. I'm also pleased to say that ADNOC LNS has delivered so far on its fleet expansion plans, with the addition of vessels that will ensure our reach in critical oil and gas markets. The fundamentals of our industry are strong, so make no mistake that that the industry will survive and thrive. Also, on the upside, there is a higher rate of adoption of new technologies, the development of digital infrastructure, and the resurgence of smart ship management concepts. There is no doubt that the longer term disruptors to the shipping industry are AI and big data, which we must embrace to push our industry forward. Because when the pandemic is over, and it will be, we will still have some key challenges to contend with. So let us not lose sight of them and put our hands on deck to address these existential challenges. I'm especially referring to the ambitious IMO decarbonization targets to reduce 40% of carbon intensity within the next decade and halving the greenhouse emissions by 2050. To achieve these targets, the industry is required to make a fundamental change in its emission pathway. And the biggest question for us today, as owners and operators, is how to decide on the most optimum ship design when building our vessels and achieve the balance of operational efficiency, cost competitiveness, and environmental compliance with our existing fleet. Luckily, there is more than one answer, and compliance can be achieved using different approaches that involve operational changes, use of different technologies, and various fuel options. ADNOC L&S, with its most diverse fleet of more than 120 vessels, is making an early assessment of the impact of these regulations and gearing up towards meeting these regulations smartly and proactively, while maintaining the competitiveness of our fleet through investment in energy efficiency technology and alternative fuel. We have ordered our VLGCs with dual fuel capability to enable our vessels to burn LPG as an alternative and cleaner fuel. In addition, we considered LNG fuel as an option for our new build VLCCs, which are due for delivery in the first quarter of 2023. Also, we specified in all our newly acquired vessels to be equipped with energy efficiency devices, enabling more efficient operations and contributing to our smart ship management strategy. And importantly, we have carried out gap analysis and benchmarking studies which are needed to appraise the most effective emission reduction strategy, considering both short and long-term scenarios. It is clear to me that the transition to decarbonization maritime transport hinges on the emergence of technology savvy shipping industry, along with our ability to manage transformation towards a digital culture. To the end of 2020 is in sight, and not many can predict with a good level of certainty what next year will bring. But it is up to us to push our industry in the right direction with so many tools readily available to aid us with this task. We must persist in the pursuit of our most ambitious goals and invest carefully in our assets and our people. After all, the wind and the waves are always on the side of the ablest navigator. Thank you.
Much, Captain Mohammed. Thank you so much for that opening address. And again, really laying out all of the great work that you're doing, particularly at ADNOC, but also for the industry. And as you said, a very resilient industry, really doing its best to bounce back. And of course, as you mentioned there, the solidarity in terms of making sure that crews are looked up, and we talked a lot about that too. So everybody really looking with great concern, and again looking with cautious optimism, I think, for the future. There's so much to be done. Thank you so much, and we will come back and talk to you. I'd like to now move our discussion on, and Christoph, if you would get us started on this, perhaps, with the impact recently, when we looked at the short-term measures, particularly at MEPC 75, we're looking at the IMO's Energy Efficiency Design Index, and also, of course, the carbon intensity indicator. And how is that going to actually impact the existing fleet? And then we will also talk about new builds. But at the moment, what can be done?
Thank you, Edna. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As mentioned by Captain Ali, decarbonization is going to be one of the greatest challenges for shipping moving ahead. And the first short-term measures that were agreed at the IMO last month, I think they're an important step in this direction. So we have the EEXI, which is an EDI index for existing vessels. It's going to affect the entire fleet. But this is a design index, so it's a one-time certification that will be needed. And now is the time to start preparing for that. In the next 2 years, it has to be done. So now is the time to assess essentially the entire fleet and see what measures have to be implemented on each individual vessel to make sure it's compliant with EEXI when 2023 comes. And that could be retrofit of some energy efficiency devices, for example, that might be particularly relevant if a vessel is scheduled for dry docking, or it could imply an engine power limitation, which it's a virtual limitation, but is going to have some impact on the maximum speed of the vessel. So depending on actual operations, it may or may not really affect vessel operations. But then we have the carbon intensity indicator as well, which is going to be an operational measure, and it's going to be with us for a long time. And the exact details of that have not been agreed yet, but we know it's going to affect us for, it's going to affect different segments in different ways. And that means that all vessels will have to be prepared for that. Maybe there is a little bit more time for this, but we have to start thinking whether energy efficiency is the way to go for its vessel, or if you have to start thinking about a certain degree of speed reduction or introducing fuels with lower carbon content.
Indeed, there's so much to do. We'll talk about all of that too. Yes, we'll come back to that because there is so much there. Dragos, if I can bring you in, and given your expertise, obviously, in shipbuilding and design, when you're looking at these new regulations, where do you see, the big challenges, and how is the industry going to actually tackle this?
Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, innovation is beautiful. The next 20 years will be a tremendous challenge within the shipping, probably historically unique, and that I cannot imagine otherwise that manufacturers, energy producers, ship designers, and engineers and shipyards will not be excited to find a solution. Challenges are numerous. It is shipping. Innovation in shipping is a unique challenge as well, because it's a long chain of stakeholders. And in this case, decarbonization, that starts from in the long term, not the short-term measures. In the long term, there is no other way that to find another source of energy, carbon-free source of energy to put the ships in move. And that's where it starts, all of it. From there, you will get back to the supply chains, you'll get back to the engine manufacturers, to installation equipment, finally design, shipyards, construction, and the owners. Now, the owners do the transportation. Should they stay and wait? Absolutely not. They should be part of it. So there is going to be a need of cooperation. Will be ups and downs in the mood. It is a lot of politics involved into this, but I would say that I'm very enthusiastic about all these, how to say, possibilities to make a major change in shipping.
Yeah. And I think there are going to be so many possibilities. As you said, it's a very dynamic time and exciting time. But we'll talk more in detail in a minute. Let me bring Steve in here. And when we look at the longer term and all of the great work that has to be done, Steve, what are we doing now? And we even heard Captain Mohammed talk a bit there about, LNG for the fleet. Obviously, LNG is what you're focusing on. But talk to us about the potential role that LNG can have actually in decarbonizing shipping right now.
Yeah, no, good morning, everyone. And I think the long-term decarbonisation of the shipping industry is a fascinating topic. I would say, however, at the moment it's dominated by academics and NGO, and it's with a really rather blinkered focus on the end goal, and there's really limited discussion of the practical commercial considerations of how to get there. It's going to be a massive scaling exercise, whichever way we look at it. And I guess our view is there will be a multiplicity of solutions for decarbonisation. There's not going to be a single silver bullet. And what I would say is that LNG is available now. It's commercially and operationally viable. It offers immediate greenhouse gas reductions, and it paves the way for further long-term decarbonisation through the use of zero emissions bio-LNG and synthetic LNG. And these fuels can use exactly the same vessels and exactly the same infrastructure. So I think when we think about long-term decarbonisation, we need to think about that pathway. We need to think about leveraging what we have, as well as the new future fuels, which will require massive investments, not only in vessels, but also in supply chains and infrastructure.
Yes, there is so much, I think, to consider, and as you said too, it's also about getting that message out. Shipping is so important to global economy as well. That as you said, and it's I suppose it's when we think about it, you can't turn around that big fleet too quickly. It's a lot has to be done. But I think again, when we look at what the industry is doing, what IMO is doing, they're certainly, I'm getting the feeling, moving in the right direction, and people are focused and they're committing to that action. Captain Mohammed, when we look at the impact, I think, and right now we really need to be looking at the fleet, and particularly in view of the IMO's energy efficiency design index, the WEXI. Talk to me about that regulation and how that we're looking at 2023. But again, right now, what can people begin to do, and what are you doing at ADNOC about this?
Thanks, Ernie. So I would like to start by saying, if anybody had any doubt towards IMO ambitions and moving towards the 2030 target, I think EEXI is going to just answer this question. The people need to remove this doubt from their mind. We are moving towards 2030, 40% reduction in carbon intensity. So you better start taking action from now and prepare yourself for the EEXI is the first milestone, which is coming in January 2023, and from the first survey of the vessel after this date, they need to be certified with EEXI. That means within 15% reduction from the 2008 baseline, we have to demonstrate either through energy efficiency devices, looking into different fuel options, or changing the operations, or even capping on the power propulsion. So there are various solutions. There's no one answer how we are able to meet this. So this is why we have to carry out an early assessment And if it requires that we have to invest, we have to see what is the remaining life of the vessel. We have to see what's the feasibility of such an investment, and to enable us to meet the 2023. And it's not going to stop even at 2023. We should have a ship energy efficiency management plan that it's going to demonstrate improvement plan from 2023 onwards. And you have to be within a category C, which is basically a trend going down from 15% down to 40% reduction in CO2 in 2030, and you have to show this improvement every year. And if you fail 3 consecutive years and then you record category D or E, then you should show also corrective actions. So it's not even going to stop in 2023. So it's very important for people to have a long-term vision and decide what to do with their fleet moving forward.
Absolutely. I think we, again, have to look at it in the long term. And as you said, it has to be something that is improved on year by, and it's not about just putting a target in place. It's about working on this day by day, week by week, month by month. Indeed, it's something that you can't rest. It has to be looked at. Christoph, come in and talk to us about, fuels and technology that you find, will be relevant to new builds particularly. And, how far in the future, when we look at what fuels and technologies we should be looking at.
Yes, I think the fuels that are available today, other than conventional fuel oil, is LNG, as Steve said, and to some extent LPG. And these are the 2 fuels that we can use today to have a real impact today. And they can also help us prepare for the future. But today, by using LNG or LPG, we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 15 to 20%. And these are also fuels that we find give you a quite good safety margin, even in the new building today, when it comes to being compliant for the lifetime of the vessel. So with these fuels, the carbon intensity of a vessel is estimated to be below the IMO ambitions for quite a long time. And that means that when combined with advanced energy efficiency measures, they give a safe design in terms of compliance, or as we call it, we like to call it future-proof. And in addition to that, it seems that because of the gas prices today and in the foreseeable future at least, it seems that from a business point of view, there's a quite strong business case for using these fuels. And that's also important. So it's a combination of both being compliant with expected environmental regulations in the future, but also making sure you're competitive enough. And we think that with these fuels today, you can be competitive as well. And I think there is no accident that we see so many of the new building orders today selecting LNG or LPG going mainly to LPG carriers. There is also a solid business case behind that. And I guess we can talk a bit later about this, but we also believe they offer a good bridge towards a cleaner future after 2030, 2040.
Yes, because indeed, I think this industry, more than anything else, has to be taking that long-term view as well. Dragos, talk to us about, the commercial and technical, I suppose, pros and cons of alternative fuel options. Because yes, a lot of them under consideration, hydrogen, ammonia, but, not really available right now today. And maybe commercially, where do you see the future for this? And what do you think will come out best, perhaps?
Well, I think pros and cons are well known, and the big challenge will be with this, how to produce them in a green manner. Today, hydrogen is 95% of it is produced from fossil fuels, and it's a very highly energy consuming intensive process. So it's a little bit more complex to that, but this we have to just Crystal said it. There is a transition, will be a transition 20-25 years. Now, the first challenge that the ship owners will have is that because of the life cycle of ships, for tankers is, let's say, 20 years, but for other ship types is longer than that. Well, ships coming out from a shipyard in 5 years from now, they will have to have incorporated features that will keep them competitive in 2035 and 2040. And I anticipate, not only I, everybody anticipates major changes. So in 2040, technologies, commerce as well might be quite different than today. So one has to have a little bit of vision on how to prepare their investments, because it's large investments into ships to keep them commercially viable and competitive. But I would say the transition period, because we're talking about EEXI, well, the IMO, the last IMO study, the fourth IMO GHG study just released, it shows that without any, well, except the design index, the shipping, for known reasons, went down on its carbon intensity or carbon footprint. They used two major indicators, and by one is like 29% reduction, by the other one is close to 32% reduction from 2008 to 2018. So if you look for the next 10 years, there will be a number of ships, existing ships, that will be phased out, and a large number of new ships that will have to be compliant with more stringent design index requirements. So we'll have, this shipping has another 10 years to beat that last 10% reduction. And I think that's in a range. It is possible. And as Captain Ali said, will be changes in operations. Where we have another challenge, need of cooperation, is keeping an open mind in how to produce green fuels. And I would go so far to say that one should keep an open mind, not even denying the utility on land nuclear power to produce green or blue hydrogen or ammonia or whatever it is. So that will be the challenges. Together with the other ship owners associations, we proposed to IMO a scheme on which ship owners could fund, or ships could fund, part of this necessary common effort to accelerate. That's the aim of it, and it's left with the governments to deal with it. And we propose to collect and contribute with $5 billion over a period of 10 years. But that's the beginning.
Yes, indeed. We have to look at, so much to be done in the future. Steve, if I could bring you in here, and, talking of funding that's needed, but also let's take a look at, investment, and look at ESG, particularly in the shipping sector, the Poseidon Principles, and work that's going on around this. I mean, a lot of changes happening, but big investment decisions that have to be made. Where do you think the focus should be, and how is it developing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Poseidon Principles is a very interesting initiative. And for those of you who may not have heard of it, this is an initiative which has been developed by many of the banks involved in financing shipping. And what they aim to do is to match the emissions of their shipping portfolio against the IMO's decarbonisation targets. So it's essentially the first year of operation. They've been evaluating their portfolios. But I think it provides a very strong signal of what the investors, many of the key investors in shipping are looking at. And I think what we can see is that for conventional marine fuels, depending on the ship type clearly, but they're sort of dropping out of compliance around about the late 2030s. That's a new build using conventional marine fuels. The use of LNG provides an extension out into the 2030s. That's just simply fossil fuel LNG. And clearly, if you introduce, again, bio-LNG or biofuels, synthetic LNG, then that compliance with that decarbonisation pathway can extend out to 2050. So I think it's a strong signal that the financial sector, the finance industry, is looking at things in a very progressive way, and it's not just for shipping. I think more broadly across the whole energy transition. So we can expect to see more initiatives like this. And essentially, what this means for shipping clearly is if you are compliant with the Poseidon Principles, you can expect a significantly lower cost of financing.
And indeed, financing, of course, something that everybody has to look on. Captain Ellie, there's a lovely comment that has just come in here saying that it's good to see ADNOC taking the lead here in the Middle East by adopting the best options available in the market today with regards reducing the carbon footprint on the vessels. So people watching what ADNOC Logistics and Services, of course, will be doing, and particularly in this region. But also, if I might ask you, when placing orders, particularly for new builds, how can owners really decide on the optimum ship design, particularly when we look at the carbon intensity regulation that's now coming into force?
Yes, unfortunately, there's no one straight answer, but I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. Now, the most important thing I would say, you need to understand your operating profile. This is the most important thing, and to understand where this vessel will be trading, what sort of average speed, what sort of destinations, and accordingly you decide on the most cost-effective design in order to ensure that this vessel will remain competitive in the long term and meeting the future regulations as well. So for us, in our trading pattern, we see that LNG is going to be the right fuel type for our Aframax and VLCCs going forward, because it's going to bridge this huge of CO2 reduction gap, as well as energy efficiency devices that we have ensured in our design, that is going to be included in our specification. And these are the available proven technology that you can actually adapt in your vessels, and it's not something that you're trying new. One of the advantage of LNG over the other types of fuel is because in the long term, not only is meeting also enabling you to meet the regulations, but it's also one of the most cost-effective commercially as well, even against LPG. So this is why we think LNG will be the fuel for certain few vessel types and sizes, say from Aframax and above, in the next decade. And we are also exploring many opportunities for hybrid vessel for coastal trade. We are exploring opportunities also for hydrogen for a ferry vessel, because we also operate small ferries for the offshore logistics. And we are also exploring rigid sail with a solar panel to be installed on some vessels. So we are looking into various types of fuel and renewable energy as well as future initiatives. But for the time being, all the new build that we have designed is included the energy efficiency devices, such as the Maywest duct and also some vessels even we are trying to specify with an air lubricator. We are trying to ensure that all the vessels are coated with a high performance coating. And of course the LNG as fuel. The network of the LNG was one of the most challenging issues in the past, and as we have seen, the network is growing rapidly, and the availability of this fuel is going to be not an issue moving forward. And also, as the regulation becomes more stringent and you need to do something else, we are currently discussing with some partners in the industry regarding the synthetic LNG and how this could be made available in UAE, for example. And of course, it requires some onshore investment for LNG synthesizer plant, but it's actually can be made available maybe at a slightly or at a higher cost. It depends on the demand. But this could be the next solution for the LNG fueled vessels, so they don't have to retrofit and invest additional cost during the life of the vessel, which is quite critical for ship operators, and ensure that you remain more more competitive. One last thing before I conclude is many operators today, they are thinking about capping the power, propulsion power. That would be the solution for 2023, for example. But I would really recommend them to review it once again, because throughout the year, yes, you're looking at the average speed, but throughout the year, you are not steaming at the average speed all the time. There are so many periods of the year where you have bad weather or you have heavy weather that you need to speed up in order to ensure that you're meeting your client demands. And these are not small parts of the year. You're talking about good 6 months maybe in the year that you need to go higher in power. And looking at the average speed is honestly, it could be deceiving and not really giving you the true picture of what you need to do. So this is, from my side with regard to what we are doing and what, in terms of the most optimum design.
And indeed, so many variables there that everybody really has to be looking at. Steve, this is natural to bring you in on this here, having Captain Ali talk about LNG. And there is also a question that has come in from Umar Ozanur talking about, can we consider LNG as a safer option than other fuels, than recent fuels? So I suppose if you comment on what Captain Ali has said and also perhaps address that question also. Steve.
Yeah, and I think what Captain Ali has said is, I think, is consistent with certainly very consistent with our views, and that I think LNG, again, it comes back to what can we do now? How do we make investments now that provide a pathway to an uncertain future? And I think one of the beauties about LNG is not only its sort of great commercial and environmental performance now, but you can actually, with those ships, with that infrastructure, you can you're on an incremental pathway to decarbonising your fleet through the use of, say, bio-LNG, and as Captain Ali mentioned, the synthetic LNG. In terms of safety, I think, as people involved in the LNG carrier business are no doubt aware, that LNG has been safely shipped now for about 50 years or more, and there are very rigorous processes and standards and guidelines in place, and that learning around the bulk carriage of LNG, and let's not forget those LNG carriers are actually increasingly fueled by LNG, so LNG has been used as a marine fuel for 30 or 40 years. Those safety standards are being translated into processes and guidelines for LNG bunkering by the industry, and those learnings have been taken on board. And I think again we just need to emphasize that there's been no significant incident in 50 years in shipping LNG. And one of the things that I think is often forgotten about, if there's an LNG spill, one of the beauties of LNG is that it doesn't actually pollute the environment; it vaporizes and disappears. So from that perspective, it's maybe not commonly thought about, but LNG brings significant operational environmental benefits in that sense.
And indeed, all of that has to be taken into consideration: safety, flexibility, efficiency. Christos, talk to us about, when you look at technology of the future and what technology can really help shipping, within that energy transition, looking to 2030 and indeed beyond, because again, what I'm hearing too is taking that very long-term view that this has to do. Christos.
As was said before, there is not, or it's very hard to say what could be the solution after, let's say, 2030. It's not clear, and most likely it's going to be more than a single fuel. Most likely it's going to be different solutions applying to different vessel types, depending on their operational profile, operational pattern, even geographical area where they operate, and local availability of fuels or infrastructure. Some of the fuels that are discussed quite a lot is, of course, biofuels and synthetic fuels that could be produced in a way that makes them low carbon fuels. But also there's a lot of talk about using ammonia as a fuel. The benefit of ammonia is that it's a carbon-free molecule. So when you use it, there are no CO2 emissions, and similar with hydrogen. Both hydrogen and ammonia, they're quite challenging for different reasons. Hydrogen is very difficult to store, which makes it also very expensive to store, but also you have limitations on how much you can have on board because it takes a lot of space. While ammonia, it's much easier to store, but it's very toxic. Engine technology is now under development, and first vessels should be expected around 2024 to test ammonia as a fuel, which means that we still have some time to go. And what we think is more important is designing vessels today that can be flexible with respect to some of these other fuel options. And Captain Ali already mentioned that with an LNG vessel, you can already switch to biogas or start substituting some of your fossil LNG with biogas or synthetic gas if and when this becomes available. And actually some biogas is already available. So this is a very important point, because with some of the engines we have today, we can start replacing the fossil fuels with their low carbon equivalent. And that can be a very good way to have a smooth transition. We don't need to replace our entire fuel at a certain point in time, but we can do this gradually. At the same time, we can start designing vessels that, and we are already looking at that can be fuel flexible with regards to later retrofitting to use another fuel. So maybe converting to run on ammonia later, or using a little bit of hydrogen. In particular, quite a few LPG carriers are interested in potentially switching to ammonia later, because there's better compatibility with materials for fuel tanks and for the engine. So that's another aspect that has to be looked at. How you can build a vessel today that later can be retrofitted to use another fuel.
And indeed, building that flexibility in. Dragos, if I can bring you in here, we have some questions from our audience, and I'm delighted that we have here. We've managed to, Steve addressed one of them there, I hope, on the LNG matter. But a question from Gary Howard here, talking about, is it enough to trust the industry to invest in clean technologies, or do we need to be pushed by legislation? And indeed, is the current legislation fit for purpose? What do you say to that, Dragos?
Well, not an easy question. Well, of course, one needs legislation. Level playing field is important. Shipping is international. It's very complex. And don't forget, we talk about so many different ship types anyway. And all may look to a very limited number of solution or type of fuels. Yes, we need legislation. Innovation will come from within the industry. It's not going to be the regulators to design equipment and installations. However, incentives are also very important. So it will be a combination of on everything. And I agree with Christos. One practical way of looking to flexibility is, maybe you design your ship for LPG, and with keeping in mind that it goes 2040, whenever the time comes, it moves on retrofitting to ammonia. So there are crystallizing some solutions out there. But just if I meant to come back to the some commercial aspects, it's not only Poseidon, it's not only the banks and financial institutions. A couple of months ago, a number of charters they launched what they call the Sea Cargo Charter, and it's very similar concept as the Poseidon Principles. And what is good for that is because it's peculiar with the legislation in shipping. The legal obligation to meet the regulation, it's a bunch of metal, but the ship, implicitly the ship owner. But basically the ship owner is buying something. So there is there is the role of the charter in operation and achieving, particularly now in the short-term measures, the objectives or the level of ambitions is very important. So you mentioned the cargo intensity indicators. These are reflecting the cargo intensity of the transport torque, of the transportation, not of the ship. And there are three main elements on that. One is the ship, how good it is and efficient. The other one is the environment, as Captain Ali mentioned. And the third one are the commercial aspects, commercial details. So I guess the next 10 years, because of these carbon intensity indicators, we may see, and because of these initiatives, we see the cargo charter, we may see some more contribution and revision, if you want, on charter party clauses, that you make sure that you provide the ship with all the opportunities to keep a low carbon footprint.
Yes, because ultimately I think this is what's important. Christos, come in on this conversation as well when we look at the Sea Cargo Charter, the Poseidon Principles, all of that is in place, and indeed the regulation that has to be there. As you say, some people say maybe it's not moving fast enough. And, but as you say, 3 years and when these regulations come into force in terms of 2023, in shipping terms, this is, it's like tomorrow. This is moving very, very quickly. What can the industry do to actually perhaps make sure they're more united and moving in the right direction here with speed?
I would say it's more like today, but 2023. But I think what is going to be very important is to have what we call a level playing field, first of all, in terms of regulations. Make sure the same regulations apply to all. That's going to be very important. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that we see more external pressure from stakeholders like the financiers or the charterers. And it's also good that at least so far this is aligned with the IMO targets. I think that's a very good sign. But I think the most important element is making sure that we have the same rules applying to everyone, and making sure that we understand also how long it takes for some of these transitions to happen in shipping. Understand how long it takes to design and build a new vessel, and how long it takes to also replace the fleet. You can't replace today ships that are 10 years old, for example. We also need to have an understanding of that. So that's it's important to understand the time scales in shipping, I think.
Yes, and indeed the timescale for us is ticking away as well. So I'd like to get your closing thoughts from all of you, if I may. Thank you, Christos, for that. And Steve, when we look again, we look at the new technology, we look at the expectations, and particularly looking to the future. Decarbonisation is without a doubt the main focus. The energy transition is happening around us. I think everybody is on board. And in terms of what you're doing, at Sea LNG, what are you hearing from your main customer and consumer base in terms of what do you all need to do next?
I think one of the big things for us as an advocacy organisation is providing some clarity, and clarity around LNG in the role of the marine energy transition. And I think one of the things that I think we need to look at this, it's a systemic change, it's a holistic change we're dealing with. And we need to look at it in the context of the broader energy transition. And this is something I think DNVGL does a very good job with their annual outlooks. Because one of the things is you can focus on the shipping industry, but massive amounts of investments need to take place on shore to provide the infrastructure and fuels for the transition as well. So we need to have this holistic view and work across the value chain, and this is what we do. We try and do within the LNG sector. And for us, again, it's a key role for us is to develop the understanding of the commercial reality around LNG, how it's ready now, how it provides that long-term pathway for the shipping industry, and I think it's a big part of a sort of education process for us, because many outside the LNG carrier business, where the commodity is incredibly well understood, but many in the shipping industry don't understand LNG. Simple things of even the units of measures in terms of energy in tons. It can be quite confusing, and I think what many people don't understand with LNG, and it comes back to that investment issue, is that the bulk infrastructure is there, the actual incremental investments to bring LNG to market, as Captain Ali has said, it's happening very quickly, are relatively small compared to some of the alternative fuels. And in this transition, we have to think about how quickly can it happen, and what energy is available now.
Yeah, Dragos, if I can have a few closing words with you. And again, we're looking at what needs to be done in terms of, the energy transition. And, as Christos said, 2023 really in shipping terms is around the corner. Is the industry working fast enough and united enough right now?
Oh, absolutely. We are all aligned to assist and be part of the IMO developments. We want these rules for 2023 ready as soon as possible, because actually the major target is decarbonization, and we're not talking about carbon intensity indicator. We're actually talking about eliminating CO2 emissions, and that's our preoccupation at the moment is to finalize these short-term measures, after which we will be active to our best abilities in going to the next step or leap. We have had for almost 20 years a dialogue. We call it the tripartite dialogue between the ship owners organization, shipyards, Europe and the Far East, and the IACS and class societies. And we have had this dialogue for 20 years, and a lot of improvements came from there. Yes, many of them came through IMO regulations, but they were cleaned up and technically and strategically been developed by experts. So I'm sure that vehicle will help us to go ahead on the same direction in the future.
Yes, but indeed it has to be. Without a doubt. Yeah. I need to move over to Captain Ali, and give him the closing word, because unfortunately we are running out of time. The shipping industry is moving fast, and the time is ticking fast. So Captain Mohammed, if I can give you the closing word here. You talked about the work that you put in this year. It's been a tough year for everybody, but building that resilience in and looking forward, are you optimistic for the year ahead?
Certainly. I mean, I would like to close with three main advices for ship owners. First of all, we need to collaborate. We need to work with each other. We need to learn from each other. Don't focus too much on competitiveness, because this is the next decade is going to be extremely challenging, and the only way that we're going to get through this by collaboration. The second thing I would like to say is that don't get focusing too much on the financial modeling and the numbers and considering the business as usual, because this is unfortunately the way many people they are looking at vessel investment. This is not going to be a vessel business as usual. You have to understand that the industry is changing, and you have to anticipate what changes coming in ahead, so that you consider it in your investment plans. Finally, I would like to say that we as an industry need to innovate. So even as ship owners, we need to take a proactive approach. So we in ADNOC Logistics, for example, looking into coming up with completely new design of vessels that's not standard today. We go to shipyard, build us the last standard spec you had. No, we are coming completely new designs. We're going to a naval firm that they are actually working on new designs, and we are working together with them and in coordination with shipyards. So this is kind of a proactive approach I would really advise the industry to look into. And with this, I would would like to conclude. And our industry is really coming to a challenging time, so we need to work together.
Indeed, well said. And I think it is about that cooperation and coordination, the complexity that is in shipping. I mean, all of you experts know it day by day, and the work and effort that's put in to make sure that this industry is actually being part of the energy transition and doing your best to make sure that the decarbonisation that we need to put in place, that swift action is taken. So it was really, really great to get all of your thoughts. Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve, Dragos, Christos, and Captain Mohammed. Thanks for your insight and sharing your expertise with us. Of course, you know, so much going on here at Sea Trade Maritime Middle East. We have a very busy schedule still in place for us. I really want to, you know, thank our sponsor for today. Thank you, ADNOC Logistic and Services, and a huge thanks to all of our panel and to all of you out there who shared your questions and your thoughts with us. It's always great to be here with you at Sea Trade Maritime Middle East. So thank you all for watching and enjoy the rest of our virtual conference. Thanks so much.